Good morning, this is James Campbell, Managing Director of Botswana Diamonds plc on the 19th of March 2020. I thought I would do a diamond exploration primer for sophisticated investors following our announcement of yesterday that we have taken the Marsfontein project from drilling through to bulk sampling. So let's start at the very beginning. What are we looking for? We're initially looking for kimberlites. These are fossil magmatic rocks that form deep in the Earth's interior and are brought to the surface by volcanic eruptions. On their very turbulent journey upwards, magmas assimilate other types of rock, importantly including diamond, and these are referred to as xenoliths. Some of the statistics on kimberlites around the world: there are 6,000 known kimberlites, 600 of which contain diamonds, and 60 have been or are mines. So the exploration process basically starts with the area selection. We look for cratons, and these are areas of ancient crust, and these are areas which host known kimberlites and are very likely to host kimberlites which have yet to be discovered. The first survey which we undertake in these areas is generally a regional or airborne geophysical survey, chiefly a magnetic survey, as Group 1 kimberlites are magnetic and should show up from a regional survey. A little rider here, Group 2 kimberlites, which tend to be much less magnetic or non-magnetic, would actually not show up on a magnetic survey. Following a magnetic survey of this nature, we then tend to do regional soil sampling to look for what we call heavy mineral or kimberlitic indicators. These are minerals which are ubiquitous to kimberlite themselves and consists of garnet, chrome dioxide, ilmenite and spinel. Typically, we take a sample of round about 30 to 50 kilograms. This could either be a soil loam sample or a stream sample, and then we undertake precision sample processing on this. This starts with screening, and we typically look at the -2 + 1, -1 + 1/2, and -1/2 + 0.3 millimeter fractions. In each of these fractions, we then concentrate the material, and this is typically done using a jig or a mini or micro dense media separation plant, and then we undertake acidization, and this is typically used to remove the coatings, more than likely calcareous or ferruginous, to reveal the kimberlitic indicators. There is then a process of sorting to ensure that we extract the kimberlitic indicators from the concentrate, and then very finally those kimberlitic indicators which have been extracted are then undertaken a microprobe process where we actually analyze the mineral chemistry of each of the kimberlitic indicators. What we look for in mineral chemistry, for example in garnets, is a high chromium oxide, calcium oxide count, as this tells us that this particular garnet sampled below the diamond stability field, and therefore this garnet came from a kimberlite of high interest. Those garnets which did not come from within the diamond stability field will tend to derate the kimberlite itself and give it a low interest rating. Assuming that there is a positive mineral chemistry results, follow-up work then takes place. There are typically two main types of follow-up work. The first is follow-up geophysics, and this could be magnetics, electromagnetics, max-min, and for group 2 or non-magnetic kimberlites could typically be gravity work. And then, of course, follow-up heavy mineral sampling, where you reduce your initial grid, of which could be 1 kilometer or 800 meters, to 300 meters, 50 meters, or perhaps even 20 meters. Once that process has been outlined and you've identified what could be a kimberlitic target, you then, of course, undertake discovery drilling. This discovery drilling is typically used by a reverse circulation percussion rig, and from this we look to identify three major features. Firstly, whether it's kimberlite, of course, and With the kimberlite itself, it's just not whether it's kimberlite, but we look at its interest rating, and that typically comes from looking at the abundance and size of the olivine macrocrysts. We also look at, obviously, the pipe size and, very importantly, the internal geology, because a kimberlite pipe would not necessarily consist of just one kimberlite itself. There could be multiple phases of intrusion within the kimberlite, and then, of course, there could be abundant waste rock in the kimberlite which fell in as the kimberlite erupted. Assuming again that this is all positive, there is an initial grade assessment, and this is typically done using microdiamonds. And how this works is that one takes a minimum 200 kilogram sample per kimberlite rock type. This sample is then either acid digested using a mixture of nitric and hydrofluoric acid or caustic fusion. There are two different approaches to this. And what this leaves you with are the very, very small microdiamonds from 74 micrometers upwards. These are then modelled using a logarithmic size frequency curve to give an estimate of the potential macro grade. This is a very, very useful exploration tool. At this point in the exploration process, you can then draft a competent person's report to help illustrate your results to the market, and this must be drafted by a competent person. A competent person is strictly defined by the SAMRAC code, which is the code which Botswana Diamonds plc adheres to. And a competent person is a person who is registered with the recognised professional association and has the necessary experience and competence and qualifications, and then of course must comply with the various provisions of the relevant promulgating acts. At this stage too, one can also draft what they call a technical economic evaluation, which gives preliminary economics as to whether this exploration target, as it's defined at this particular point, can move forward. Assuming again this is all very positive, the next stage is what they call inferred resource assessment, and this is designed around getting sufficient confidence on the quantity, grade and average diamond value in order to imply geological grade continuity. This is typically done using core drilling, bulk sampling and large diameter drilling, and there are 5 variables where we need to get this sufficient confidence: grade, diamond value, volume, density and geological model. And typically, for a diamond value perspective, from an average kimberlite, and of course the kimberlites vary enormously, we're looking at recovering round about 500 carats. Again, assuming that this is positive, we then move on to indicated resource assessment, and here we're looking at getting a much greater degree of confidence in the kimberlite, which would allow us to apply modifying factors to support mine planning and the economic evaluation of the deposit itself. And here typically, from a diamond value perspective, you are looking at 5,000 carats, and this would allow you this degree of confidence to move forward. The next stage, of course, you start to go into technical studies such as pre-feasibility, feasibility and bankable feasibility studies, but that's beyond the remit of this particular podcast. Before I close, I'd just like to touch very briefly on risks and key issues. In this, technology is absolutely critical. The diamond exploration process is a very precise process, and there must be a great deal of care taken from a quality management side. And then from an evaluation perspective, the key issues here relate to the reduction of diamond damage, particularly through the drilling process, and the loss of diamonds through any form of process and theft issues. Because the loss of one large high quality diamond can significantly impact on your overall project. Another very important point is that typically in this environment, those people who have sufficient experience and a track record of finding mines, not necessarily finding kimberlites, are those who will continue to find mines and kimberlites going forward. This podcast, of course, eliminates the vital geopolitical risks, which are a very important consideration, in addition to the prospectivity discussion which I have outlined during this podcast. I hope this has been helpful for our sophisticated investors, and I look forward to updating you in due course. This is James Campbell, Managing Director of Botswana Diamonds plc, on the 19th of March in the year 2020, signing off.